She's inhabited by the ghost of Mary Shelley.
Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name's Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello. And this week on the podcast, we'll be getting you up to speed on the latest chapter in the Warner Brothers, Paramount, Netflix psychodrama.
And we'll finish on a happier note with a couple of film recommendations for recent releases. Sirāt and Maggie Gyllenhaal's Frankenstein spin-off, The Bride.
But first, as we emerge from our post-Oscars fug and yet another lacklustre awards season, should we be scrapping these award ceremonies altogether? We're going to be talking about it. So I know it was your birthday last weekend, James. a big milestone.
Yes,
James was 50, everybody.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, I know. Can't quite believe it myself, but yes, it's happened.
So that's why we're doing this Oscars discussion a little bit late, a week later, because I feel like you were knee deep in celebrations literally during the Oscars.
Yes, absolutely. My social diary was a little bit busy around then.
Yeah, but from what you've seen, what did you make of the ceremony?
Yeah, I was watching it and my main overriding feeling was just how it felt very out of time, out of touch. I felt like I was watching something from a slightly different universe, which it's always been like that. But I think, especially when I was younger, that was part of the excitement, was this other world, this glamorous other world that's very distant and, we're all aspiring. Wouldn't it be great to be famous? And then suddenly the world has changed. I've got older, please see the footnote of me turning 50. But there's just something about it where I just felt it really feels detached. I don't know how everyone else is doing out there, but, just life's a bit tougher at the moment as far as just money doesn't go as far, the usual things we're having. And then I turn the telly on and I just see this very opulent award show that I don't know, I can see why it's kind of feeling a bit irrelevant and not as popular as it once was. I think the kind of razzle dazzle that these events do, I just feel like people have moved on from being entertained by just that.
Yeah, I agree. It feels very old Hollywood, which, when I was younger, felt like a charming thing in and of itself. But I think, yes, the combination of it feeling not very relevant to the world we're living in right now, we can talk about that. In my opinion, huge dearth of political engagement in this award season in particular. And the fact that it's just so slow. I watched the whole ceremony, James, up till 3 a.m. to watch it. Yeah, because I was covering it at work as well. So I was allowed to come in late the next day.
Right.
Yeah, if you want to hear about my thoughts on the red carpet, guys, listen to Monocle and Fashion. But it's just so incredibly slow and retro in the fact that you've got Conan O'Brien doing his little bits, and then we throw to the guests, the people. Yeah, exactly. And throwing, look, I don't mind the tux. To me, it's a crying shame that the formal wear and black tie is basically dying a death. This is a topic for another, maybe more for Monocle Fashion, but I don't mind the dressing up. For me, that's the funnest part of the whole thing. But everyone's sitting there in this big hall and everyone, the pacing of it is so slow. The fact that they still have a glamorous woman escorting the winners off stage. How retro can you get? So,
hey, look, when I win my Oscar, I want a glamorous woman escorting me off stage, just to make it quite clear.
Well, the fact that they haven't updated it in all these years, it's going to happen for you, I'm sure. But so it was just, it felt, especially, what really I think puts it in sharp relief is the Super Bowl of being a few weeks prior, which it's such a cultural moment. Even people outside of the US, we all watch it. I don't watch the sport, but I certainly watch the halftime show.
But the halftime show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the fact that Bad Bunny made that, it was a political performance, even though it wasn't wearing that with any kind of heavy or sort of
just the fact that it was it was Bad Bunny doing it, I think, was a political statement in and of itself without him having to be explicit, was it?
Yeah, that and the fact that it was all in Spanish. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so just the putting that in stark relief with this show where, I read some articles afterwards of course, some slightly right-wing media outlets complaining that it was being politicized because Javier Bardem said free Palestine. But they're basically, there were literally like 4 or 5 moments that you could call political. And it was as light as that, really. Like, the nod to what's happening in the world outside was so fleeting. And yeah, as we said with Bad Bunny, it's like, a whole performance speaking to something and being quite moving in what it's saying, and it being more complex than simply just a statement as you're given an award. I don't know, that just like resonates so much more, right? So I think that it is just kind of, like you said, out of this world, another disconnected from anything out there. And that's okay. That can be fun. It's like escapism, right? But it needs to be entertaining. And yeah, the pacing of the whole thing, the fact that
glacial,
yeah, it was just so slow, and the way they try and make it more faster is by cutting everyone's speeches, when really I'm here for the speeches, if nothing else. It's interesting to see, right? So that combination of being like slow in the between bits and then those speeches being cut and it being like offensive to the people who are on stage who didn't get to have their moment, it's just like a strange combination to me.
Yeah, like I say, I watched highlights, watched selected bits. One bit that just stuck out to me that is nothing really a major, but I just thought it was a fun little moment. I think it was when Jessie Buckley won the Oscar for Best Actress, and it cut to a shot of Chloe Zhao, and she was like dancing in the seat, doing like that. But she obviously was unaware that the camera was on her at that moment. But Spielberg was sat right behind her, and obviously him being an old pro at this, was always aware of where the camera is. And he's like, you could see he puts his hand on her to just kind of, all right, Chloe, just maybe calm down a bit because the cameras are on you. But it was a fleeting moment before it cuts away. But yeah, that was something that I spotted, just like having the hand of the patriarchy, just to like,
Yeah, quieten down. To me, that's the kind of thing that I want to see.
You see,
I want to see people.
That's old Hollywood. You see, old Hollywood trying
putting
to put
its
the
hand
new Hollywood
down
in
on
place.
New Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Because yeah, honestly, that's the kind of thing I want. Like I want the actual moments of people with these actors, their guard down, having fun together, having a chat, something like this. So I was very interested to see that the Oscars is from 2029 is going to be moving to YouTube. And I hope that means, I pray to God that means there's going to be something more dynamic done with the show. I don't know, interviews with people as it goes, like more an interactive experience to make it a bit more energized and like dynamic.
Because I do wonder what you can do with just an award show that's live. Like there's only so.
I think there's a lot. I mean, obviously you need to run the show as it's going, but there's other things you can have. YouTube is so kind of interactive. You can have other things running alongside it to make it a bit more interesting, basically.
It definitely needs a bit of a. They need to try some other things, which I know they have been trying. But I'm interested to see where this goes with YouTube. But yeah, it feels like it just feels like a bit of a relic from a bygone era at the moment. The Oscars, just this latest one.
Well, and we're looking at the stats. The Oscars, BAFTAs, and Golden Globes, they've all had a dip in viewership since last year. They're all on the decline. So it's not like it's just the Oscars. Award ceremonies in general are on the decline. And I think they're all suffering from this same thing of just not being particularly relevant or interesting to watch, especially I think because we're so used to, our brains are so trained now for TikTok, for these quick, short bursts of something entertaining and then moving on. And that's just not what the pacing of these ceremonies is. I mean, I think the other thing, I read something about how we need to be like looking to the future, making these, like with the halftime show, to bring it to that again. It's also, everyone watches it for the adverts, right? Because so much money is spent on these like interesting trailers for things. Like, why isn't it more of that? Why isn't this being used as an advertisement for the future of film rather than
Yeah.
everything that's gone before? Like, get people watching these things because you're going to see like a preview of, June 3, we want to talk about that towards the end of the show. The new trailers come out. Why wasn't that given its premiere during the Oscars? And we could have had the cast were all there. They could have had a moment on stage.
Yeah. There was a thing that struck me. I mean, kind of, I don't know quite how related to what you just said. Is like I agree with you. There needs to be more of an event, more events. Just it being the Oscars is no longer impressive. I think is what it is. Just handing out the golden statuettes. It needs to have a bit more cultural relevance. One thing that I found interesting was like they recreated the sequence from Sinners where the kind of the juke joint burns down while they're singing a song, and that was great. That's a great sequence from the film. But I was like, but why are we recreating it on stage? I just felt like they should have done something else, like, because that sequence is great in the film, and now it's like, and now see the musical theatre version of it. I don't know. I just felt like
that.
No, I just felt like, yes, I didn't dislike it. It's just like, it's this idea of maybe it needed to be something different, something more of an event.
I think the trouble with these shows is that there's an audience there of all these celebrities, all these stars who've agreed to come here and sit in this hall for like 5 hours. They're all starving. They're all desperate for a drink. And, most of them are not going to win. So it's all going to be kind of a night that will end in disappointment. So I think part of it is like you need to entertain the audience that are there, but then you also have to entertain the audience at home. And I imagine being there watching that performance would have been fantastic. But you're right. It wasn't such an interesting watch for us viewers at home, and you're right, nothing doesn't compare to the actual
To actually seeing it in the film.
That's a good point.
So just a little thing that I picked up on, which was a shame, is that they have the in memorandum section, which of course Rob Reiner got a very good heartfelt tribute with a lot of cast and crew. Yeah, but there was just one person who it was highlighted had been left out, which was David Keithley, who since the early 70s has been one of the major figures at the IMAX Corporation, passed away last year. And he was still active at the company. In fact, I got a personal email from him a couple of years ago when I complained about the aspect ratio of a screening of Interstellar in Manchester. And he took the time to personally reply. It wasn't a stock form letter and all that kind of stuff, but heavily involved with it. And without him, we wouldn't have Christopher Nolan's films on IMAX. He owned the company that kind of converts all the film into the right format. So he was a key part of the kind of the modern day kind of experience of going to see an IMAX film. And his son, who I didn't realize, his son Jeff Keithley, he's better known to my students because he's quite a big figure in the world of computer games, and he was not happy about his dad being kind of overlooked in that section there.
Oh, I mean, to be honest, that is a key part of the Oscars, is who's been missed off, because every year, I mean, the French were up in arms that Brigitte Bardot hadn't been included. James Van Der Beek was also missed off.
Oh, really?
It always happens. For me, the thing that was quite jarring was that Robert Redford received a tribute from Barbra Streisand. And I'm sure their relationship evolved past this movie, but she spoke about him, and particularly about him calling her Babs, which it seemed didn't really like, but that was his nickname for her. And then she sings the song from The Way We Were, which is the film they were in together. Now, reading Julia Phillips' book, You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again, she talks about how much they hated each other during the filming of that, in quite some detail. So that's all I could think about when she was giving her tribute, was like, are you making this about you, Barbara, as always? Or are you genuinely that's sad? And then she sings the song, and, God love her, but like, she doesn't quite have the voice that she used to. So it was, for me, an interesting tribute. But I know that a lot of people found it very moving. So, fair play. But yeah, for me, Billy Crystal tributing to Rob Reiner was just like heartbreaking, really. So yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of things that are really nice, but yeah, I don't know. Do you think the award ceremonies should be scrapped? Because I sort of feel like at this moment in time, when basically the film industry is at a critical juncture and is struggling so much, the Oscars is something that, if we're talking about IP and how important IP is these days, the Oscars still carries cachet. I do think it does. And so it should, it actually needs to do what it can to help save the industry. And I
Yeah.
just I'm my big question is whether, with the move to YouTube in particular, like moving it to a more popular and international platform, are we also going to see more of a move towards like box office successes and mainstream hits, rather than the Oscars being an opportunity to celebrate the films that don't do financially well for the most part, but are considered critically and artistically successful?
Yeah, I don't know if what it's going to change as far as where the awards go. I suspect it fundamentally won't change because of the way they could have to dramatically change how the Academy votes for Oscars and all that kind of stuff as far as the films that get picked. But I do think award ceremonies still have a role. Just that I think I don't know what the answer is, but something needs to change as far as how they're presented and kind of offered up to the world. Yeah, I like the Oscars being a bit of a mix of stuff that is either popular, but what the Oscars dishes out awards to doesn't particularly bother me too much. I think that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? It's get the discussion going. Who was robbed? Who should it have gone to? So who gets the awards doesn't need to change so much. It's just like the delivery mechanism of like a 3-hour award ceremony in a room, just with everyone in their posh frocks. I don't know. Just there's just something needs to change, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. It's like, how do you do an awards ceremony? How do you give out awards in a way that's interesting?
I mean, maybe it's like part of me thinking is maybe it's not live anymore. Maybe it's just is it just I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah,
Is it just
maybe
gonna be
it's just like pre-recorded the night before, and like start it earlier so people have had their lunch and then they go and do the thing. And then you can like have because you know what, what made it fun watching it from the UK this time round was whenever there was like a commercial break or a bit of a pause between awards being handed out, it would cut to like the ITV studio, and Jonathan Ross and a couple of film people were discussing what had happened, and that was fun for me. That to me was like as interesting as I'd have rather had that than Conan O'Brien's bits, honestly, so so to speak.
yeah.
So something like that perhaps, right, where you could like show these moments of the awards being given out and have a speech of full, because you're not going to be like constrained time wise in the same way. You can cut it if they are a bit longer. You
Yeah.
can make that decision after. You're not pressed for time. Yeah, maybe, someone being handed their award and then immediately after you get an interview with them. That would probably be more fun, right?
Yeah, different YouTubers having, I don't know what they call them, social experiments, pranks. I don't know, but
Yeah. I mean, Amelia, I forget her surname, but
oh
Amelia
yeah,
from
Chicken Shop Dates, she did the thing
exactly,
with
yeah.
Conan.
She's on
Yes,
the red carpet
yes.
interviewing people, and that to me is the funnest part of the Oscars these days. Is her having her moment chatting with the guests. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some stuff they could do.
Yeah.
But on a happier note, were you happy to see Paul Thomas Anderson smash it, One Battle After Another,
Oh,
do so well?
absolutely. I was very, very happy about that. I thought, for once, the right film, the right director got it. I thought Sinners might have kind of swept the board, and also I saw Sinners in IMAX again. It had a quick one showing at the View Printworks IMAX last couple of days ago, and it was like an almost packed out screening. Everyone was really into it. But I was happy that. But I think One Battle After Another is my favorite film out of the two by far. So I was very happy to see it win. Very happy for Paul Thomas Anderson. Yeah.
Okay, now moving swiftly on to get more downbeat news, I guess we have to say.
More
It's
Hollywood shenanigans.
Hollywood's continued struggles. Well, you may remember that a while ago we did a very somber episode looking at the Netflix deal to take over Warner Brothers, because that had just been announced. But since then, everything has changed, and what seemingly was dire has now gone to apocalyptic, perhaps, for Hollywood.
Yeah. It's out of the frying pan into the fire. I don't know. It's like lesser of two evils. It's neither option is good, basically, but it's a different type of bad. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think is the way to see it. So Warner Brothers, off the back of one of its, I think it's the best performing studio, having a string of hits, and the ones that weren't hits probably critically acclaimed as well. So a very good year for the studio.
Yeah, Warner Brothers won 11 Oscars for One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Weapons, it equals the record for the most wins for a single studio. And Paramount, by contrast, did not earn a single nomination.
Right. Oh, I didn't spot that one. Yeah. So, yeah, over the past few weeks, Paramount has mounted a successful hostile takeover. So they basically just kept coming back and offering more and more money to Warner Brothers until it got to a point where they just could not turn it down. Essentially, is what happened.
And Netflix were like, "This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We can't meet that. You know what? We're out."
Yeah, they're saying that to them it was good value at the price they'd agreed to, but it wasn't. It was no longer that value for them. And of course, that part of this deal that was made is that if that were to happen, if Warner Brothers were to change and go with a different studio, they were entitled to a 2.8 billion payout if that were to happen. So Netflix have now just earned 2.8 billion by not having to do anything in the end. So.
Yeah, so maybe a happy ending for Netflix rather than a huge loss.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, it's a bunch of things up against them. Like it's with the current state of politics in America, it's a very divisive kind of political atmosphere. And Netflix were about to wade into the whole of that by acquiring Warner Brothers, that also has CNN. So they were probably going to have to jump through a lot of hurdles to please the Trump administration to get it all passed. Now, that's no longer a problem for them, and that's also probably not going to be a problem for Paramount, because the Ellisons, who are the father and son duo behind Paramount, they are very much in there with the Trump administration. And their offer also includes to buy CNN. And CNN at the moment is kind of, I wouldn't say it's kind of critical, but it just delivers the truth in the news, CNN, and Trump doesn't like that. So there's a good chance that will then become pivoted to a Trump-friendly news organization. So there's like all this political maneuvering behind it. The other thing as well is that it's a leveraged buyout, which the Netflix deal was not a leveraged buyout. Do we know what leveraged buyout means?
No,
Right, okay.
James, tell us.
Okay, when you hear leverage buyout, if you ever, because you keep hearing this word leverage buyout, it might pop up in conversations to do with corporate takeovers. When you hear that word leverage buyout, just know immediately, without knowing anything else, that's really, really bad for the company that's been bought, right? Leverage buyout is the worst kind of thing possible that can happen as a financial thing. Basically means that you buy a company, but how you buy it is you don't use your own money. Oh, no. You take out a massive bank loan, but you put the debt onto the balance sheet of the company that you're buying.
Right. Which is brilliant, because the whole point of Warner Brothers Discovery being up for sale, right, was because they had loads of debt. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And guess what? We're going to add more debt to it. But so that's the whole Paramount deal. It's a terrible financial deal. As in it doesn't put the business, it puts the business on a much shakier financial grounding, because to purchase it. It's just had a lot of debt piled onto its balance sheet, and it already has a lot of debt on there. So yeah, so that's the thing that bothers me the most, is that it's absolutely, the financials are not as good. There's also a lot of money coming from what they call sovereign wealth funds. When you hear sovereign wealth fund, that just means a foreign country's investment vehicle. So it's their government can invest in other countries, right? But what that fundamentally means is a lot of Saudi Arabian, Middle Eastern money, sovereign wealth funds, are funding a large part of this buyout. So what that also means is that a big media organization is being part owned by foreign countries that could then exert some kind of editorial control over things that might be produced. And of course, why are these sovereign wealth funds wanting to invest in America? It's to get on the good side of Donald Trump, because they thought they were going to get something out of it. They gave him $400,000 aeroplane because they thought that might buy something. And let's see how that's worked out for them this year so far. Not very well. So what I'm saying is, maybe all these sovereign wealth fund investment might get retracted, might suddenly realize they don't want to invest in America, perhaps.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Ellisons, because they are actually low-key the new Murdoch family. If this succeeds, because basically Larry Ellison we've mentioned, as you said, he's a friend of Trump. So he is the founder of Oracle, which is a cloud storage company that basically is used by governments, by huge private organization, hospitals.
They are cloud company, but what they are specifically, they're a database company. It's like very boring tech, but it underpins everything. If you've got a database in your organization, you're probably using Oracle software somewhere. So they underpin everything.
Yeah. It's organizing and storing data for companies that have a huge amount of that, which because of AI has become huge. So what was a really successful company has now gone completely bananas since the AI boom began. So he's very much a tech billionaire. And then his son seems to have been an aspiring star, Hollywood star, because he started out making his directorial debut, which was, in order to fund that, they started Skydance Productions. Then that quickly, that did not do very well. That kind of went nowhere. And then they quickly pivoted to expanding Skydance. Skydance Productions became Skydance Media, and they began funding films, including the very first movie, which was something called Flyboys, starring James Franco, and also David Ellison had a part in the movie.
How funny.
So you can see that this like Nepo baby aspiring to like break into film somehow, be it directing, being acting. But anyway, that film was a total bomb. It cost 60 million and made about 18 million, has 34% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it didn't do particularly well. But they have had other hits since with Skydance. True Grit was a Skydance movie, which I thought was fantastic. The Jeff Bridges, Haley Steinfeld movie.
Yeah, they made a bunch of Mission Impossible films as well.
Yeah, and that's mainly what they've been making is like these big budget movies is kind of where they're going. I think they did some Star Trek spin-offs as well.
To be clear, David Ellison is a huge Star Trek fan, so there's hope in the geek community that he will perhaps, because remember as well, Paramount are buying Warner Brothers, but Paramount themselves were only recently just bought by the Ellisons, so it's all a lot of newness. So there's hope that Paramount, that produces Star Trek, under Dave Ellison, perhaps they'll get Star Trek back on track, because that's a whole world of just like Star Trek, as Star Wars has been driven into the ground, Star Trek's been absolutely crashed into the. It's a disaster. So there is hope that perhaps they'll at least make Star Trek great again.
Let's see, because while Skydance was a pretty small entity at that point, just like plugging away, co-producing movies with bigger companies, including Paramount, to make these films, then they kind of suddenly went in, bought Paramount, a much bigger entity, and which meant taking over CBS News, amongst other properties. And then shortly after, Trump tapped Larry Ellison to become a part owner in TikTok as part of the US buy of TikTok. Yeah. So now if this goes through, which it may not still, like we will see, but that means that the Ellisons are going to own TikTok, part own TikTok, two of the major news organizations in the US with CNN and CBS, and then two film companies or TV stations. This is basically, in the modern age, having control over a social media company along with these means that, you are the new Murdochs. And given their close alliance with Trump, it's definitely something to be concerned about. But just if we're just looking at the film side of things, just to focus on that, James, if this goes through, what will it mean for Hollywood?
Oh, that's the big question, Lily. I don't not sure I have the proper answer to that, but I do know, just from the aspect that I kind of have a bit of a care about, is that they at least are a bit more respectful of the theatrical window, the theatrical model, because unlike Netflix buying Warner Brothers, which was a new streamer buying an old studio, you've got an old studio buying an old studio. So at least I think
it's an old studio owned by a very recent tech billionaire and a guy who's been running a studio for like 15 years.
I know. I'm not really defending it as some big thing. I'm just saying it's a slight glimmer, just a little glimmer there, just a little shaft coming through a little chip in the prison cell wall.
Okay, I mean, yes, perhaps, but I mean, I mean, the huge thing is there'll definitely be job losses, right? They're going to merge these two studios. So that seems like an inevitability. So just in terms
Yeah.
of those two companies, this is bad news. But then
Mm.
alongside that, if we only have one company rather than two places you can go with your story as a screenwriter, as a director, less competition, a monopoly on the studios or fewer places to pitch your stuff to means that the chances of you actually getting something made, there's less competition. I think it's actually a much worse situation than with Netflix, because I mean they've claimed that they're going to release 30 films a year. I'll believe that when I see it. But like the reality is in this, like it doesn't make business sense to release that many. And I think that yeah, the main thing will probably just be less films being made. I think the question is for the industry, what is better? Fewer films being made, but getting a theatrical release, or more films being made and fewer getting a theatrical release?
Yeah, probably does mean less films being made. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, the big thing is that the likes of One Battle After Another or Sinners, these are films, both these films were denigrated by the right as being like woke movies. Will films like this be made now that Warner Brothers is owned by a pro-Trump family?
Yeah, these are all concerns. Absolutely. How much will that affect the editorial output? I suspect quite heavily, But then it'll be interesting to see, will those films that do come out make more money? Will they make more or less money, I guess?
Yeah, I mean it's on the one hand, reading about David Ellison and his forays into film that's got him to where he has. I mean, actually, of course, it was helped by having this financial backer of his billionaire father behind him. But he seems to have made some good choices. And yeah, the Top Gun Maverick was like a film that at the time when it came out was hailed as like saving cinema because so many people went to see it.
Crazy. It made over $1 billion at the box office. Who would have thought? I don't think they thought it would make that much, but
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, he probably does have yeah, looking at the list of movies that they've made, it's a real mixed bag, but definitely they're going for those box office hits. So even though I'm like cynical about how many they'll actually make and like what the repercussions for the industry are, and I don't know how much experience they really have, but I think there is a possibility that it might mean we do have more of those mainstream hits
yeah.
under his
I'm
stewardship, because he seems to like those kinds of movies.
Yeah, I'm just hoping we still have a few spots for some original films in there rather than just IPs and remakes.
I know, because even True Grit, the one film that stood out to me, it's like, oh
Is a
yeah, that was
remake.
fantastic, is a remake.
Yeah, I know you can't escape them. That's what's so refreshing about Sinners is like it's because One Battle After Another, of course, it's technically an adaptation, even though a very loose adaptation. But
Mm.
Sinners, was a wholly original screenplay, which on the rewatch enjoyed it even more than the first time round, and yeah, managed to convince a lot of the students at the film school that the screening was on, it was worth going to see. So a bunch of students all kind of said it was absolutely mind-blowing watching it in that kind of environment.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, okay, all we can do is wait and see. Because, yeah, like I said, it might not even go through. We could, yeah, just like our like panicking about Netflix and now they've backed off.
Yeah,
Maybe it will all come to
there could
nothing.
there could be another conglomerate lurking in the wings that's going to have an even bigger hostile takeout. That's an even worse set deal for everyone. Who knows? Yes.
On that note, shall we talk about a couple of film recommendations?
Absolutely. Why not, eh?
What I like about this is I think for both of us, for both of these films, um, these are recommendations with a caveat that you may love, you may hate, and that's why you should
Oh,
go
yeah.
see. But let's start with The Bride, James, because I haven't seen it, so I need to hear all about it from you.
So The Bride's been on my radar just because it's had a classic, like the troubled production. There's been lots of murmurings and rumors and like, yeah, disastrous test screenings and rumblings that things weren't right. So as soon as I hear that about a film, I'm interested. Like that kind of. I want to. It's a bit megalopolisy. You got to kind of see. So I wasn't expecting it to be some kind of masterpiece. I really wasn't with The Bride, because I got the impression it was a mess, and it was probably going to be a bit of a hodgepodge of different things that probably didn't hang together.
And this is Maggie Gyllenhaal's second movie, sophomore movie,
Second
right?
movie, yeah.
Yeah, and her first movie, I think we did talk about this before, but her first movie, The Lost Daughter, is, to my mind, a masterpiece. I absolutely loved it. So I had high hopes, even though, yeah, we did know that we had heard that the production was troubled. And both star Jessie Buckley, I wanted to point out.
Yes, yeah, oh right. And I mean, watching The Bride, it was the thing that I was concerned this could be an issue, was that going from a very, very low budget film, one of that's especially, kind of made with a small crew, small budget, everything small, to suddenly go from that to a $90 million feature is a huge step for any director. And like most times you kind of have one or two films in between to bridge the gap. Because there's a
Absolutely.
lot of moving parts about taking on a big production, and I just felt that I could tell that from watching it. It felt like Maggie got a little bit lost somewhere. Like there was a bunch of good ideas, there was some good moments, but the whole thing it was a mess, and I can see why I mean, there were people walking out of the screening I was at, and I've read that
Really?
people walked out. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, but so just tell me, this is obviously we talked about Frankenstein that came out, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, a few months back. I'm assuming this is like Bride of Frankenstein vibes. This is what happened if Frankenstein got the girlfriend he wanted, or is it slightly different to that?
Yeah, no, it is Bride of Frankenstein vibe. Sorry. Yes, I'm skipping over the. I mean, Christian Bale plays, the monster, and he plays him like the classic. He's got the bolt through the neck. He looks like the version that we think of as the archetypal Frankenstein's monster. But it's set in the 1930s because Frankenstein, the monster, can live like a longer than human life, and for some reason that I've forgotten exactly why, but when they reanimate the corpse of this woman who becomes the bride, she's inhabited by the ghost of Mary Shelley. And
Okay,
so,
sorry, let me get my head around this.
yes, please do.
So, Mary Shelley writes a book, a
Yes.
fictional book about Frankenstein,
Yep.
and then that actually, in this world, that is maybe a book about something that actually happened, perhaps. And by the way, it's not like Bride of Frankenstein is something that she wrote. That was a sort of concept that spun off
I
from
know.
from
Yeah,
an
yeah,
idea
yeah.
within her book. I can't even get my head around that, but okay, do carry on.
But listen,
Fun.
you just have to kind of vibes it out, is what I did. And I loved it because like the things that I enjoyed about the film, the thing that worked for me is that everybody's definitely trying to make something here. So it's shot for IMAX, and they shot with the cinematographer of the controversial Joker 2 film was also the cinematographer on this, but very well executed use of the IMAX format, lots of aspect ratio changes and lots of reasons for the changes. So, for example, every time that the ghost of Mary Shelley is talking to the bride, it becomes this huge 1.43 films the IMAX frame, and it's Jessie Buckley playing Mary Shelley, and it's in black and white. And every time he does that, it's great. I'm really into it. But yeah, as far as like the logic of it, Lily, it absolutely doesn't make any sense. But none of the film does. If you're gonna come here and apply logic, so. But like for the first hour though, I'm well into it because it's just so mad. Like there's some nice visuals, there's some great set pieces. There's like a dance routine where everyone's like dancing in sync, and you can absolutely tell that this was meant to have been released in Halloween season, which is it would have probably done a little bit better if it'd been released then, because it even ends with the song "The Monster Mash" is like seeded throughout of it.
Oh my
Throughout the
God.
film, yeah, that we do the monster mash, and that comes on the end credits. You just think, yeah, this was absolutely meant for Halloween. The whole vibe of it is meant to be out then. But
That's such a shame.
yeah, I don't think it wouldn't have made it suddenly a great film, but I think it would have had a few more people go see it. But halfway through, I'll be honest, Lily, the fun of it just being this mad rich brew started to wear off, and it's like it's now like an hour in and nothing's really happened. Like there's no real plot. people are just going from one scene to
Oh,
another.
really?
There's nothing really driving it, and then suddenly it's a bit aimless. So
God, that's so disappointing. I mean, actually, from the trailer, it was definitely unclear what the plot would be, but I assumed, because you see them in a car together, Frankenstein
yeah,
and Frankenstein's bride,
yeah,
so I imagined it was sort of a Bonnie and Clyde
it is,
escaping,
but
but that's it.
But yeah, exactly. That's it. And where are they going? Who are they escaping? It's all very hazy. Just it kind of feels like it's been re-edited, and that they just kind of. It's a mixture of. I'm sure it wasn't really even there in the script, but then they're trying to save it. So it's just a bit patchy. But for me, this is like this is my idea of like watching The Room. Like
Hmm. Which
it's
I
bad.
watched again very recently, can I say?
Did you?
Hmm.
What
I
for any
took,
particular reason, or did you?
well, because my husband hadn't seen it and a friend of mine hadn't. So a group of us went to the Prince Charles
Oh, you went.
screening. That's the only way to see it. Um, and it was brilliant as ever. And I mean, Leo came away saying we should go to that every month. It's fantastic. So, but I mean, for my own sanity, I can't. But do carry
Yeah.
on. Okay, wait. I feel like that is really doing The Bride dirty, comparing it to The Room.
I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, not really. Like, as in, it's got more going on than The Room, as far as there's much more intellectual rigor, much more craft going there. But what I mean is, it's like it's a director trying to do something big and it just not working out, and it kind of like just that's more what it feels like. It's a big swing, but just doesn't quite work. And so, like, I enjoy it in the fact that the bits that don't work are kind of ridiculous, and it's trying to do something. So I was entertained by its attempt.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think, and that's the thing, is that this leads us nicely on to the film I want to talk about, Sirāt. Have you seen
Mm.
Sirāt?
I have. I bloody loved it. I thought I might have recommended it to you. Yeah, I went to see it in the cinema. Yeah,
Oh, really?
absolutely. I had
You
a great
loved it?
time.
Okay. Well, then
Yeah.
that's fun because we can spar. Okay, so
Mm.
Sirāt, it came out a couple of months ago, directed by Olivier Lache, and it was nominated for Best Sound Design at the Oscars, got the Joint Jury Prize at Cannes. So, having seen the trailer and this amazing shot of people dancing at a rave in the desert, I was like, I'm there. I want to see this movie. This looks epic. And it's set in Morocco in the desert there. So where you get these like incredible landscapes. And it's basically a road movie where a father and son duo, we meet them as they're looking for their missing daughter who they heard might be at this rave. And then for reasons that I won't get into, they end up joining a convoy of ravers who are going to another party on the other side of Morocco. So they are driving through the desert. The father doesn't have the right kind of car for this. They have these like massive, massive vans, and he's just got his like people carrier, but he follows them. And it starts out with this, the first scene at the rave was like nothing I've ever seen before, beautifully shot, kind of surreal. I was like looking at reviews, and Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian, I really loved what he said about it. He described how it's both like Dionysian ravers and also lost souls writhing in hell. And that's totally it. Like, I both wanted to be there and couldn't imagine anything worse. I mean, as a very pale skinned person, raving in a desert, it seems like hell to me, but it was also like really intoxicating to watch. So it had both these things. And then as they like go on their like road trip, you get very invested in the cast of characters, most of whom are like unprofessional actors. And that's brilliant. And then the second act kind of kicks off with something horrific happening, which is a complete
Yeah.
shock. And then the third act, it's like horrific in an almost comedic way. And I don't think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the intention, but it's like, what the actual fuck? And I just felt like I was like completely baffled because on the one hand, I've been with the film the whole way through, loving it. And so I want to stay with that and like trust in what it's doing. But I also didn't feel like any of the crazy shit that goes down in the second half was earned and didn't make sense with the plot of the film. I literally, as soon as the first crazy thing happened, I was like, how am I meant to carry on like sticking with these characters? Because there's no justification for this having happened in my mind. Like, there's clear blame. This is crazy.
Yeah, that kind of like really fundamentally pulled me out of the film as well. That the kind of that sequence, and I was like, how can the film recover from this? Like, how can we,
Yeah,
and it couldn't to a degree, but so I enjoyed it for its like the atmosphere and the sound design. Like that's why it came on my radar. I'd heard lots of great things about the use of techno music and kind of club culture sound, and that aspect of it was phenomenal for me. Like they really got lots of texture out of those kind of techno kick drums and the rolling bass lines. But yeah,
absolutely.
but I also had the same issue with the jarring tonal shifts, and it kind of towards the end feeling more comedic. But also, I just it didn't bother me too much as it. I didn't hate it. I just felt it quite. I did feel the jarringness of it, but what I was immediately drawn to, though, were the parallels to a film that I'd seen only a couple of months previously, which is William Friedkin's film Sorcerer, which is in itself, it's kind of a remake of Wages of Fear. So it's Wages of Fear, Sorcerer, and I would say Sirāt is essentially a modern remake of Sorcerer. It's about Sorcerer is about a bunch of criminals trying to transport highly dangerous and highly explosives, dynamite across like a mountainous, barren terrain, and the sequences are from Sirāt that are almost shot for shot the same as that. So
Oh,
it's that.
interesting.
And in Sorcerer, it's not really about this journey. It's more a metaphysical, like existential. Is it a journey into hell? Are they all dead? That kind of thing. And so it's a riff on that, which I quite liked. It's like a rave remix of Sorcerer. I'm not saying that makes the faults any better, but that was another layer of enjoyment. I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. They're kind of making a rave generation version of this kind of mythological quest story.
Okay, well, that's fascinating, and I want to watch Sorcerer. Would you recommend Sorcerer? Does it work better than Sirāt, would you say? Or
I would,
equally
I, w-
questionable?
I would love your take on it, because it's certainly much like Sirāt. It has these crazy tonal shifts
Yeah,
that
because I
you
was going
just
to say
kind of.
that's quite William Friedkin anyway, right?
Yeah, and so like the way that the Sorcerer starts, the first 20 minutes, and then how it changes, it's like it's kind of very audacious, very audacious. So yeah, worth a watch. Definitely, I'd say a superior film to Sirāt, but certainly, it's definitely a companion piece.
Well, I have to say, yeah, and talking about films that like take big swings and don't fully succeed, the
Mm.
night before I watched Sirāt, I'd gone to see How to Make a Killing.
Oh, that's the Glenn Powell film, right?
Exactly. Glenn Powell film. It was the movie go of the week, so that's why I went to see it. It wouldn't
Oh
have
no!
been
You see,
my
I've movie go of the week. It's always like it's probably in a bit of trouble. The film probably needs a bit of help.
yeah, certainly for a film that's like a more kind of mainstream movie, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely not a typical movie. And that film, it's like a very old fashioned, like it felt very old, like 90s Hollywood thriller. Like it was quite like it's sort of like a black comedy, unlikable lead, anti-hero vibe. And, it was perfectly serviceable. I was fairly entertained, but it was like very on the nose, and like, you're following the super wealthy in New York. So it's like very familiar, like nothing is new
Mm.
about this film. So I was like, meh. It wasn't terrible. And actually the ending was quite kind of in the inverse of Sirāt. It started off as like, yeah, whatever. And actually I thought that the way everything wrapped up was like very
Oh,
satisfying
great.
and better than I would have expected, honestly. So it was like the best of this kind of film. But I mean, it was very telling. There was literally no one in the audience. There were like
Mm.
4 people, whereas at Sirāt it was fully booked, and Leo and I had
Ah.
to get seats 1 row behind each other, and then we asked the guy, like we sat together, and then I asked the guy whose seat it was meant to be if he could sit in front, and then it turned out him and the girl that he was sat with like had a friend in common and got chatting, and I was like, oh my god, I've put a couple together, this is amazing. But then they kept chatting, and Leo was like, oh my god, we've
Oh
we've
no,
created a
you created a
monster.
monster. So where did you go then if it were a packed out screen of Sirāt?
Well, I have to say it was at the Genesis in Whitechapel on a Wednesday, which the tickets tickets are £3 on a Wednesday. So I think that was the thing. It's like people taking advantage of that. But still, of all the movies they could have picked, there were other films on offer and people chose Sirāt. So that was really nice. But yeah, my point is simply that I was way happier watching Sirāt and feeling a bit confused, maybe a little bit cheated, a little bit like, what the hell happened here? But it being like something refreshing, something I haven't seen before, and like trying to do something versus How to Make a Killing, which is like cinema by numbers, it felt to me. So I was so pleased I went to see it, even though I wasn't fully sold on it. And I was kind of shocked that so many critics had said it was like outstanding, because I feel like it was middle.
Yeah, I'd say it was middle for me as well, but it was middle as in, but interesting middle. And I'd much rather have interesting middle than essentially the Glenn Powell just mediocre nothing. At least it was trying and it worked in places.
Yeah, it was like middle, because some things were amazing, some things completely failed, and I would rather I'd rather the extremes than just middling in the middle. Okay, just to finish up, let's quickly talk about Dune 3. The trailer has dropped.
Oh, yeah.
What do you make of it, James?
Oh, I'm very excited. I've read the book, but it was a few years ago now, and my memory's a bit hazy as to what happened. I've got it mixed up with some of the other books, so can't really tell what the story is going to be about so much. But visually, the vibe of it looks like more of the same. And also for me as well, this one is the first of the Dune films that's shot on film IMAX. They've shot digitally. They've shot digital IMAX up to now, so that's going to be a huge change in how the quality image is going to look. So I'm very, very excited by that.
Yeah, me too. I think it looks amazing. What you want, like the big epic final battle kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson with a bleach blonde close crop.
Yes.
I'm excited to see that. Yeah, it's like real event screening. I cannot wait. I'm just sad that we have to wait till December.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that they've managed to keep the Marvel's Avengers Doomsday out of the IMAX screens. I don't know if you've heard that one. There's been a big hoo-ha as to who gets the IMAX screens for the opening weekend, because I think they're both coming out the same weekend, or there's 1 week separating them both, the new Avengers film and Dune. And Dune got in there first. They booked the theaters, and they are not budging. They are not budging, because Disney are complete dicks about booking out theaters and bullying people. But Disney's not getting they're not getting Avengers Doomsday, which also I think shows you ever so slightly how much Marvel's kind of sheen is waning a little bit, because I think 5 years ago there's no way Dune would have like got preference for the theaters over Doomsday.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because I definitely want to see it in IMAX. It looks like made for it for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Groovy Movies. We'll be back next month, so keep an eye out for that drop in your feed.
Absolutely. And if you can leave us a like or a review, it all helps get the podcast out to a larger audience.
So I'll see you next month. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod, or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.